Hi, this is Peter Propp, and welcome back to another episode of 10-Minute Strategy. We are here today with Dick Cross, who is a serial turnaround CEO. He is the founder of the Cross Partnership, which is a group that helps mid-tier companies and emerging startups build and develop their strategies. And most importantly, he is the author of Just Run It, which is recently published by Bibliomotion. It is an Amazon best-selling new release, and it's right now featured at Barnes & Nobles all across the country. So we're really delighted to have Dick on the show, video, blog, whatever this thing is that I do, and it's a real honor. So Dick, thanks for being here.
Well, it's an honor for me, and it's really quite exciting for a first-time guy to be having these things happen around it. It's great.
Excellent. So tell us about the book and how you came to write it. What was the inspiration?
The gestation is probably 25 years. It was in the mid-'80s. I've been consulting for about 5 years with a great group of old Harvard Business School profs, and I'd seen a lot of companies, and I had really two observations out of that, big ones. One was that nothing is more influential in the success of a business than the quality of the job that's done at the absolute top. And the second, and it was presumptuous for a young guy, was my observation that it's generally not done very well. So at that moment, I decided that my career was going to be about figuring out how to do that job really well, demonstrating that, and passing it along to others, because I believe it makes a huge difference.
Right. You know, coming out of IBM, the bosses we had, the GMs and the vice presidents, they had some very specific things they had to do at different times of the year. Their planning cycles were super defined, and that sort of rigor is a structure that people can react against or embrace or enhance. But a lot of smaller companies, they don't have that sort of stuff to work with. They're just out there selling something that a lot of people liked, and they wanted more people to like it, right? They wanted to do it better, but they don't have the structure like a big company might.
Well, I like everything else. The circumstances of business have changed from the time in the late 60s and early 70s when that idea of a very formulaic, rigorous notion of organizational planning made sense. And things are moving so quickly these days, and quite frankly, the level of intelligence in businesses is so much higher generally than it was then, that old model just doesn't work. And it affects the whole concept of how you do the job at the top. And the new model is much more about the person at the top having credibility, being trusted, being open, receiving, and quite frankly, having a framework to, in the way the human mind can only do, process, see the connections, see the outcomes, see the opportunities for the business, and lead, assemble resources to make great things happen. And so few people in this country really have that capability. We're still working with a model that really came out of the Second World War for how you run an organization.
Right. Interesting. So I know you talk a bit in the book about fear. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I won't say I've seen them all, but I've seen a whole lot of companies in the United States. There's 6 million of them, and I've seen several thousand. And I've worked with the CEOs of several thousand. And the least common denominator happened every year at the mid-tier president's course at Harvard that I taught. About the second day, this huge black cloud would rise, and these people who walked in with their shiny briefcases and their lipstick just perfect, one of them would finally turn to another one and say, "Do you really know how to do your job?" And that person would yell, "No, I don't. You don't know either." and I think that's endemic. We have raised the position of CEO to such admiration without any prescription for how to do it, that there's so many people that are caught in this situation of knowing that they probably could do their job better, but they can't go to anybody or tell anybody that situation. That's why I wrote the book.
Right. So how do you think we got into this situation? What was what sort of changed in the way businesses run, and how do you think we're gonna get out of it?
Well, I think that we're still living in virtually all of Western culture with this Newtonian idea that the way to understand something is to disaggregate it into its subparts, and if you understand the subparts and put them back together, the whole thing ought to work. that's the way business schools are designed. Somehow we're supposed to believe that you go to 2 years of business school and you take courses in every conceivable subtopic, and you graduate and you're supposed to know how to run a business. And
Right.
that generally doesn't work. There's a whole discipline. It's not complicated. The subtitle of the book is "It's Easier Than You Think." And it is, but there is a framework, there's a discipline, there's a way of approaching that job every day that works that we just don't know. So that's kind of how we got there. There's no plus. There's not HBS. No business schools have a course called "How Do You Run a Business?" So the answer is, and it's entirely self-serving, is I'm a guy that spent 25 years experimenting and thinking about this. I have a method that's easy to understand. It's led me through 8 against-the-odds turnarounds as a CEO. I've taught it, and my point in life right now is to equip everyone else with that, or as many people as I can, because it does make a difference in the performance of the business, and it makes a huge difference in quality of life of everybody associated with it.
Excellent. And in terms of the target for your book, would you say this is mainly for the owners of small businesses and up to a couple of $1 million in revenue, or is it really, would a public company CEO get a lot out of reading this book as well?
Here's what I think about it. It's my own personal bias, and I got to deploy that since I wrote the book. I talk about things called mainstream businesses of America, and what that means to me is it's a business that can be run by one person as a general manager. You're not working through other CEOs or GMs to run the business. And in that situation, this book and what I've learned will truly help that person in the position at the top of that organization to be much more effective and much more joyful in their work. Now, there are a lot of businesses that are composed of multiples of those kinds of things, and I've worked in those as well. I've worked at the corporate level to help them understand that, and then worked in the individual business units. But it's not a book for somebody who's confronted with figuring out the politics of how to work a dozen different general managers underneath them. And it ranges from startups to nearly billion-dollar companies.
Right. I would suspect that a GM or a VP or a director at a bigger company would also benefit, because they're looking at more of a smaller unit that might be a little more manageable.
Sure. I've worked in large companies down through their operating units and down through the operating units to individual department heads to build sort of a nested logic throughout the company, and that is consistent in how they run things.
Right. Excellent. Right, so there's 3 big tools you got in the book. I'm going to read them to you, and I'd like you to describe them real short, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do another discussion where we really dig into those 3 tools, okay?
Oh, that's great. I'd love to do it.
Awesome. Okay, so what's the back of the envelope exercise?
That is how you understand the composition and the concept of your business. It's something we don't challenge very often. Once it's put in place, it tends to be sort of carved into granite over the mantle. But vibrant businesses change continuously. And I was late one night on a plane. I was an architect as an undergraduate. I was sketching an envelope on the back of a yellow pad, and it just came to me. It was one of those pathetic flights at midnight where everybody's feeling pathetic, and all of a sudden I exploded. I said, gosh, on the back of an envelope, I can understand whether a business is internally consistent and whether the sum of the parts equals more than just the arithmetic calculation, whether it truly has meaning. So that's basically that. It's the starting point.
And then the renewal model?
Well, that picks up on this idea that the pace of change in the ecology surrounding business is going very, very quickly these days. And the businesses that are truly successful over time are the ones that mold themselves intentionally and consistently and aggressively to change that business concept, the back of the envelope, as the circumstances around them change. And that's what wins these days.
Excellent. And the trifocal lenses.
That's a metaphor that really came to me after figuring out that there really is a 3-part formula for actually doing the job at the top of a company. And it involves being able to conceptualize and, I'll use the word, infect everyone in the company with a vision, an inspiring vision that's anchored in principles for what could happen if, in fact, we do things right. That's the first part of the trifocal lenses, vision, and those are your far-out lenses. The next piece is strategy, which is what are the handful of things that we actually have to make happen to get on that path? And then the third set of lenses are your close-in lenses, and their execution. And it's what do we need to do every day in addition to what we normally do to execute those strategies to achieve the vision. So trifocal lenses is the way I think about it. And that's how to do the job.
Excellent. Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground. We're going to get back together and talk about those three things in a little more detail. But Dick, it's been a real pleasure. Thanks so much for participating.
Hey, thank you so much. It's been great. Look forward to next time.
Okay, thanks, Dick.
All right.